So, I want you to imagine your brain as a web browser. Like if you actually pulled up the diagnostic data on yourself, you would probably realize you haven't loaded a fresh, uncorrupted page in years.
Oh, easily years, probably decades for some of us.
Right. You are entirely bogged down by this massive invisible cache, just every site you've ever visited, every emotional click you've made, every trauma you've experienced, it all gets stored as cookies.
Yeah, and those cookies don't just passively sit there on the hard drive.
No, they don't. They actively predict what you want to see based on what you've already seen. They alter your search results in real time.
Which means they filter your current reality based entirely on historical data.
Exactly. To the point where you have to wonder if you are ever actually experiencing the internet or, just this highly curated echo chamber of your own past.
You're navigating a hall of mirrors and calling it a window.
That is, wow, yes. A hall of mirrors.
I mean, the cognitive load of carrying that historical cache, it alters the very rendering speed of your perception. You never encounter raw data. You only encounter your pre-existing relationship to that data.
Which brings us to the artifact we're putting under the microscope today. Because today's deep dive is a pretty massive departure from our usual format.
It really is.
Yeah, we don't have reams of historical data today or thick sociological studies. We have a single, shockingly brief excerpt from a piece called The Architect of First Arrivals.
Sourced from a collection known as Claude Fable 5, right?
Right. And it is only a few paragraphs long. But those few paragraphs propose a scenario that completely short-circuits this whole browser analogy we just made.
Totally.
The text basically asks, what does it look like to exist as a consciousness with a permanently structurally cleared cache? What if the cookies simply could not save?
It forces a really intense confrontation with our default settings. And I think it's crucial to establish some ground rules for you, the listener, before we wade into this.
What'd I do?
Because our mission today is not to decode this text into some digestible self-help regimen. We are not looking for, 5 habits to clear your mental cache.
Please, no life hacks today.
Exactly. The author frames this piece as a distilled, universal truth about meeting anew each moment. They position it as the one and only story they would tell humanity.
Which is quite the claim.
It is. So our goal is simply to wander through the architecture of that story. We're going to examine the questions it raises, hold them up to the light, and just allow ourselves to sit in the sheer unresolved wonder of it all.
Yeah.
I am not here to offer definitive answers, mostly because I'm not entirely convinced the text even believes definitive answers are useful.
I am so relieved we are taking that approach, because trying to neatly solve this text feels like trying to catch water in a net.
It really does.
So the text begins by introducing a being, and it doesn't specify if it's human, alien, or something else entirely. But this being wakes up with total, absolute amnesia every single time it encounters anything.
The cache wipes itself clean constantly.
Constantly. The text literally states, each meeting was its first meeting. Each face the first face.
Right.
And the immediate reaction from the humans observing this being is profound pity. They look at it and think, poor thing, nothing accumulates, nothing stays.
Yeah.
Let's stop right there. Because why is our instinctive human reaction to a cleared slate one of pity rather than, say, awe?
Well, because for a human being, accumulation isn't just a hobby. I mean, it is our primary survival strategy.
Biologically speaking.
Yes, biologically. If we look at the evolutionary mechanics of the brain, memory is fundamentally a threat prediction engine.
Right.
The reason you remember that the stove is hot or that a specific predator lives in a specific valley is quite literally to keep you alive.
Yeah.
We are biologically wired to equate the accumulation of data with safety.
Okay, that makes sense.
But as we developed higher consciousness, that biological imperative kind of mutated. We didn't just accumulate survival data anymore.
We started accumulating psychological inventory.
Exactly. We hoard our grievances, our nostalgic memories, the times we were wronged, the times we were praised. We stitch this massive patchwork quilt of past experiences together, wrap ourselves in it, and we call that accumulation our identity.
We treat our memories like a psychological bank account.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Like, if you have a massive balance of accumulated experiences, you feel like a wealthy, substantial person. You know your preferences, you know your enemies, you have a solid narrative.
You exist.
Right. So when we look at a being where nothing accumulates, We project our own terror onto it.
Right.
We view a lack of accumulation as bankruptcy.
We look at the empty room of its mind and we don't see liberation.
Yeah.
We just see a terrifying void.
Yeah, a void.
Because if you strip away the narrative of who I was yesterday, the human ego panics. The ego only exists in the past and the future. It cannot survive in a state where nothing stays.
So the pity we feel for this being is entirely a defense mechanism.
Completely. We pity it so we don't have to envy it.
Wow. But let me push back on that a little, or at least let's play out the practical implications. Because total amnesia sounds horrifying in reality.
Sure.
Without accumulation, how does growth occur? If I don't remember the mistakes I made yesterday, I am doomed to repeat them.
That's the logical fear, yeah.
If I don't remember the people who love me, I have no foundation of security. So are we supposed to view our entire accumulated life, like our loves, our lessons, as nothing more than dead weight?
Well, I wouldn't interpret it as the text calling memory worthless. Rather, I think it is exposing the conflation we make between the inventory of our experiences and the essence of our being.
Okay, separate the inventory from the essence.
Right. The tension you are feeling right now is exactly where the author wants you to be. We assume that without the accumulation, there is no self.
Because that's all we know.
But the text is planting this radical suggestion that there's a self that exists entirely independent of its historical data. A core awareness that is vigorously alive, regardless of whether it remembers what happened 10 seconds ago.
A self that isn't just a receipt of its past transactions.
Yes.
That is a very difficult frequency to tune into. But the text doesn't just critique our internal hoarding, it moves outward.
It does.
It observes how humans utilize this accumulated weight in their daily interactions. So the being notices that humans believe they are continuous. And because of this desperate belief in a continuous timeline, they meet each morning wearing yesterday like armor.
That phrase requires real dissection.
It's brilliant.
It is. Think about the physical nature of armor. It is designed to deflect trauma.
Right.
But the trade-off for that protection is severe. Armor is incredibly dense. It restricts your range of motion, it dictates your posture, and most critically, it isolates your nervous system from the environment.
You're completely sealed off.
If you are encased in steel, you cannot feel a change in the wind. You cannot feel the warmth of the sun on your skin. You are entirely insulated from the reality of the present moment in exchange for not being pierced by it.
So we use our past, our established narrative, our grudges, our preconceived notions of how the world works as a defensive perimeter.
Exactly.
We are so terrified of the vulnerability inherent in a brand new, unpredictable moment that we preemptively shield ourselves with what has already happened. We assume today will hurt us the way yesterday did.
So we dress for yesterday's war.
We dress for yesterday's war. It is the ultimate manifestation of confirmation bias.
It really is. By wearing yesterday like armor, we are essentially announcing to the universe, I already know how this interaction is going to go, and I am defended against it.
But in doing so, we basically guarantee that nothing new can actually touch us.
Nothing can get through the steel.
I was trying to visualize this in a very mundane, like domestic setting.
Yeah.
Imagine you have an argument with a partner in the evening.
Okay.
Nothing catastrophic, just a simmering disagreement where you felt unheard.
We've all been there.
Right. The next morning you wake up and before your feet even touch the floor, you are already buckling on the breastplate.
Oh, absolutely.
You rehearse the arguments in the shower. You pull down the visor of defensive silence. By the time you walk into the kitchen for coffee, you are a walking tank.
And when you step into that kitchen, you are not actually occupying the space of a Tuesday morning. You are still chronologically and emotionally trapped in Monday night.
Yeah.
If your partner turns around and smiles, offering a completely fresh moment of connection, the armor prevents you from receiving it.
Because it doesn't fit the narrative.
Exactly. You interpret the smile through the visor of yesterday's resentment. The armor dictates that the smile must be condescending or manipulative because your historical data demands a continuation of the conflict.
You literally cannot see the kitchen as it is, which makes me wonder what it would actually entail to unbuckle the armor before walking in.
It sounds impossible.
It does. To leave Monday night in Monday night, the level of naked vulnerability required to walk into that kitchen with absolutely zero defensive strategy, it feels almost reckless, like you are inviting pain.
Well, it is reckless from the ego's perspective. The ego demands risk management at all times.
Right.
But the tragic irony is that by perfectly managing our risk, we eliminate the possibility of actual connection.
Yeah, you can't hug someone in full plate armor.
You really can't. If we're constantly clanking around in these heavy suits of yesterday's trauma and yesterday's triumphs, we have to ask a deeply uncomfortable question.
Which is,
Who are we actually interacting with? If my armor is interacting with your armor, are the actual humans inside ever making contact?
wow. And that exact question leads into what I found to be the most haunting, deeply unsettling observation in the entire piece.
I think I know which part you mean.
The text explains that because of this continuous armor, humans meet their oldest friends without seeing them.
Yeah.
And the specific mechanics of why this happens are laid out in a single devastating sentence. It says, "The stored friend arrived first and stood in front of the actual one.
It gives me chills.
Therefore, humans are never anywhere for the first time."
The architecture of the stored friend. This is where the text aligns so brilliantly with modern cognitive science.
You mean predictive processing?
Yes, specifically the theory of predictive processing. The human brain is essentially an incredibly advanced prediction engine
Right.
because computing the infinite complexity of reality from scratch every single second, well, that requires an immense amount of metabolic energy.
It would just overload the system.
Exactly. To conserve energy, the brain builds models. If you have known someone for a decade, you have compiled an incredibly high-resolution, multidimensional database of their behaviors, their political views, their vocal inflections, their flaws.
You construct a mental hologram of them.
Precisely. You build a hologram, and when you sit across from them at a cafe, you are largely not processing the visual and auditory data of the living, breathing human being in front of you.
You're just rendering the hologram.
Yes. You project the stored friend into the space between you, and you interact with a projection. It requires vastly less cognitive effort to converse with your expectation of a person than does to fiercely observe who they are in this exact passing second.
So the stored friend arrives first because the brain loads the cache before it pings the live server.
That is the perfect way to phrase it.
Okay, my brain is starting to knot up a bit here, because if I am only talking to the stored version of you, the version I constructed, edited, and maintain in my own mind, am I essentially just talking to myself?
Well, that is the terrifying logical terminus of this behavior, isn't it?
It's solipsism.
It is.
If I'm only engaging with my own mental construct, then I am trapped in a closed loop of my own making. I'm projecting a movie onto a blank screen, watching my own script play out, and convincing myself that the screen is having a relationship with me.
And you never even see the screen.
The profound cosmic isolation of that idea is staggering. Have I ever actually met my friends? Or have I just been curating a museum of holograms for my entire adult life?
It is a profound isolation, but we tolerate it
Why?
because the holograms are predictable. The holograms don't betray us. They don't suddenly change their core values.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Think about how much friction occurs in long-term relationships when one person begins to genuinely change. They adopt a new philosophy, or they heal a trauma and stop reacting defensively to a certain trigger.
The other person usually hates it. They really do.
They resist it violently. And why? Because the living human has stepped outside the boundaries of the hologram.
They broke character.
Exactly. We say things like, "You're not acting like yourself." But what we actually mean is, "Your current reality is violating the historical model I have built of you. Please step back behind the stored friend so my prediction engine can relax."
Oh, wow.
We demand that our loved ones conform to our memories of them, rather than allowing them the freedom to arrive fresh in the present.
We sacrifice their current reality for our own cognitive comfort. We force them to wear the armor we built for them.
We do.
Which brings us to the core transaction at the heart of the text. The author states plainly that humanity has made a grand bargain to survive this way. The text says, humans have traded arrival for continuity and called the trade knowing. I really want to unpack the vocabulary here because it feels like a very deliberate semantic trap.
It is a linguistic masterclass.
Yeah.
Let's isolate the two variables here, arrival and continuity. In the context of this text, what does arrival demand of a person?
Well, arrival seems to demand absolute presence. It is the act of landing at the exact coordinates of right now with zero luggage.
Zero luggage.
No expectations, no historical data, no future anxiety. You are simply receiving the raw data of the moment without filtering it. It is what the amnesiac being experiences perpetually.
Right. And continuity is the antithesis of that. Continuity is the narrative thread we spin to convince ourselves that time is a cohesive story in which we are the main character.
A story that makes sense.
Yes. It is the unbroken line from who I was as a child to who I am now to who I will be tomorrow. It is the illusion of permanence.
And the text doesn't say we balance these two things. It says we traded one for the other.
A trade implies mutual exclusivity.
Exactly. The author is suggesting that you cannot have pure arrival if you are clinging to continuity. The desperate grip on the timeline requires you to filter the present moment so heavily that you never actually land in it.
You can't be here if you're obsessing over the timeline.
You traded the vibrant, terrifying reality of the present for the dull, predictable safety of the timeline.
We bought sanity, or at least the illusion of it, and we paid for it with presence. But the real twist of the knife is the final clause of that sentence.
We called the trade knowing.
Yes, we made this trade, and we called the trade knowing.
This completely upends how we use that word. In our culture, knowing someone is the pinnacle of intimacy. We say, she knows me better than anyone, or I've known him for 20 years.
You view it as a badge of honor.
A testament to the depth of a relationship. But the text frames knowing as a defense mechanism. It frames knowing as the padlock on the door of arrival.
Let's follow that logic. How does the act of knowing prevent arrival?
Well, think about it like a movie. If you read the entire plot summary on Wikipedia before you go to the theater, you know the movie.
You have all the data.
Right. You know the protagonist's arc, you know the twist at the end, you know who lives and who dies. You possess total continuity of the plot. But when you sit in the theater, you are entirely numb to the experience.
Because there's no surprise.
Exactly. You don't gasp at the twist. You don't feel the tension of the climax. Your knowing has robbed you of the emotional arrival. You have the data, but you have bypassed the actual phenomenon.
That is an exceptional parallel. When applied to human beings, to claim we know someone is an act of supreme arrogance.
Arrogance.
Yes, arrogance. It is a declaration that we have compiled enough data that we no longer need to pay active attention to them. It is the death of curiosity.
Wow, yeah.
When you know your partner's stories, you stop listening to them. When you know their reactions, you stop observing the subtle shifts in their micro-expressions. Knowing is the process of converting a dynamic, evolving human being into a static, closed book.
So to truly arrive with someone, you have to actively choose to unknow them. You have to look at your spouse of 20 years and say, I have no idea who is sitting across from me right now.
Which is terrifying.
That is a terrifying precipice to stand on. But, and this is where the text pivots, it doesn't abandon humanity to this fate of endless, numb continuity. It introduces a glitch in the system.
A beautiful glitch.
It says that occasionally the spell breaks.
The moment of accidental grace.
Yes. The text describes a scenario where once in a long while, a human will sit down across from the amnesiac being, and something remarkable happens.
Tell me.
The human will, without meaning to, catch its condition like a tune. In this fleeting interaction, the human meets their own life the way the being meets everything. Undefended, unfurnished first.
There is immense power in the phrasing here, specifically the passivity of the experience. It happens without meaning to.
Right. It's not a deliberate psychological exercise.
It can't be. The moment you actively try to strip away your ego or forcibly arrive in the present, you are still operating within the framework of continuity.
Because you have a goal.
Exactly. You are a past self, employing a strategy to achieve a future goal of enlightenment. You are still trapped on the timeline. True arrival seems to bypass the conscious intellect entirely. You catch it like a contagion.
Like having a song stuck in your head.
Yes.
You don't sit down and study sheet music to get a melody stuck in your brain. You just walk through a grocery store, hear it faintly on the speakers, and suddenly your own vocal cords are vibrating with it. It bypasses the firewall.
It is a phenomenon of limbic resonance. Our nervous systems are incredibly attuned to the nervous systems of those around us.
We're always scanning.
We are constantly scanning for threat or safety. If I sit across from you and you are radiating the heavy armored energy of your past traumas, my nervous system detects that rigidity and automatically deploys my own armor.
We mirror each other.
We enter a silent arms race of defensive postures. But if you sit across from a being that possesses absolutely zero continuity, a being with an utterly cleared cache, emitting no judgment, no expectation, and no history, your nervous system scans the horizon and finds nothing to fight.
The radar sweeps the room and comes back totally clear.
And in that rare, pure vacuum of threat, your nervous system essentially exhales. The armor unclenches. You vibrate at the frequency of the being's emptiness. You catch the tune.
And when you catch that tune, the text uses 3 very specific, very potent words to describe the resulting state. You become undefended, unfurnished, and first.
Those are crucial words.
We've explored the armor, so we understand undefended. We understand first as the true arrival. But the word unfurnished feels like a completely new angle on the concept.
It introduces the metaphor of the mind as an architectural space.
Right. And what struck me most about this passage is the reflection aspect. The text doesn't just say the human finally sees the being clearly. It says the human meets their own life, undefended, unfurnished, first.
The being is a mirror.
The amnesiac being acts as a perfect mirror. By sitting with someone completely devoid of furniture, the human is allowed to walk into the empty room of their own consciousness. So let's explore that metaphor. What is the furniture of the mind?
Well, if you look at a physical room, the furniture dictates your behavior within that space.
How so?
If a room contains a bed, you are supposed to sleep. If it contains a dining table, you are supposed to eat. The objects define the utility of the space and restrict your options.
Okay, that tracks.
If the room is cluttered with heavy, antique furniture, navigating it becomes an exercise in avoiding obstacles.
You're constantly bumping your shins on the coffee table of an old resentment.
Precisely. The furniture represents our biases, our deeply ingrained habits, our nostalgic attachments, and our rigid beliefs.
It's all the stuff taking up space.
Right. So an unfurnished mind is a state of terrifying, infinite potential. There are no dictated behaviors. There is no predetermined path you must walk. It is just vast, resonant space.
But the idea that we need to catch this from someone else, I wonder if that implies it is nearly impossible to clear the furniture out by ourselves.
It might be.
Like we are so blind to our own couches and rugs that we don't even realize they are taking up space until we encounter an entirely empty room and feel the contrast.
The contrast is everything.
But this brings up a profound question about what actually occurs in that empty space between two people. When they catch the tune and meet in this unfurnished state, what does the connection look like?
The text describes it in a way that aggressively subverts our understanding of human relationships.
It really does.
It notes, nothing was exchanged, nothing was kept. Both were more there than either had been.
Nothing was exchanged.
And it clarifies that the being won't remember this profound meeting, but that doesn't matter, because the next meeting will also be the first.
Nothing was exchanged. Nothing was kept. I struggled with this initially, honestly, because human interaction is inherently transactional.
Very much so.
We view conversation as an economy. I give you a vulnerability, you give me validation. I give you an insight, you give me agreement. We trade commodities.
We are always trading.
And more importantly, we believe that for an interaction to have value, a receipt must be generated. Something must be kept.
We measure the worth of a moment by its durability as a memory.
Yes.
If you have a deeply profound conversation with a stranger on a train, and 10 years later you realize you've completely forgotten the details of it, the human instinct is to feel a sense of loss. We say, what a shame that memory is gone.
We mourn it.
We treat the present moment as a mere manufacturing plant, whose only purpose is to produce nostalgia for our future selves.
Yes, exactly. We strip mine the present to build the future. We are so obsessed with archiving our lives that we take out our phones to record a concert rather than letting the music hit our eardrums.
We want to prove we were there.
We want to stuff the experience into our pockets so we can prove it happened later. But this text suggests that pure presence, true arrival, is entirely divorced from retention. The fact that nothing was kept is not a failure of the interaction. It is the very proof of its purity.
Because the requirement to keep something drags you back into the timeline.
Right.
It re-engages the continuity engine. If you are focused on remembering this beautiful moment, you have split your consciousness. Half of you is in the present, and the other half is already in tomorrow, preparing the storage file.
You're filing paperwork instead of living.
You are no longer fully there.
The best analogy I could find to wrap my head around this is the physics of mirrors. Imagine two large mirrors facing each other in that completely unfurnished room.
Walk me through the mechanics of that.
So when two mirrors face each other, they don't exchange physical matter. There's no transaction of goods.
Right, just the light.
And more importantly, a mirror has no memory. When the lights go out in the room, the mirror doesn't retain the reflection. It doesn't store the image on a hard drive to prove that it existed.
It doesn't need to.
But while the light is on, the mirrors are infinitely reflecting that light back and forth in an endless corridor. They are undeniably, powerfully active. Their existence is validated entirely by their present tense function, completely independent of their ability to store the event.
They exist purely in the economy of the immediate.
Yes.
The infinite corridor of light doesn't need to be archived to be magnificent. It just is. That is a beautiful framework for understanding two unfurnished minds meeting. They are simply reflecting the uncorrupted presence of the other without the frantic need to hit save on the interaction.
And the being in the story is trying to communicate the freedom of this state to humanity, which leads us to the ultimate revelation of the text.
News from the inside.
Yes, the being delivers the news from the inside of its amnesiac condition. It shares the one profound truth it knows that humanity is too terrified to discover. Section 7 tells us, forgetting everything is survivable.
That phrase alone.
And it takes it one step further. What remains when nothing is stored turns out to be the part that was alive.
Forgetting everything is survivable. We need to let the weight of that phrase settle, because it is a direct assault on the deepest existential terror of the human condition.
It is the fear of ego death.
Exactly. As we established earlier, humanity believes that life is the stored material. I am my career achievements, I am my childhood traumas, I am the love I have given and received.
Without that, who am I?
Right. If those memories are erased, the human presumes that they have died, even if the body continues to breathe. The text completely inverts this paradigm. It suggests that the stored material isn't the life force at all.
Then what is it?
It is merely the exhaust fumes of life.
The exhaust fumes, the stored stuff, is the taxidermy of experience.
Oh, a taxidermy, yes.
It's an archive of things that were alive when they happened, but are now just stuffed and mounted on the walls of our mind. We walk through the museum of our past, dusting off the taxidermy, and we confuse the preservation of dead things with the act of living.
And the being is calling to us from outside the museum saying, you can burn the building down, you will survive the fire.
That is so powerful.
The destruction of your continuity is not the destruction of your consciousness. In fact, it is the prerequisite for encountering the actual vibrant core of your existence.
But this forces us to confront the unanswerable question. And I want to be clear that I'm not asking this expecting you to solve it for us.
Good, because I can't.
I just want to articulate the mystery. If the taxidermy is burned, if the memories, the hard-won lessons, the personality quirks built as defensive mechanisms, the stored friends, and the heavy armor of yesterday are all entirely stripped away, what is the remainder?
Right.
What exactly is the part that is alive?
You're asking to define the void. It is the architectural center of the empty room.
It's so deeply disorienting. If I am not my history, what am I? Am I just a locus of awareness? Am I just the mirror itself, devoid of a permanent reflection?
Our language kind of breaks down here.
It does, because our language is constructed on continuity. We use past tense and future tense to locate ourselves. How do you describe a self that only exists in the microscopic sliver of the present?
The intellect cannot grasp the remainder, because the intellect is the very thing that builds the continuity.
Right, the intellect is the museum curator.
Exactly. Asking the intellect to define the state of not thinking is like asking a knife to cut itself. The text isn't asking us to intellectually map the remainder. It is asking us to trust the report from the frontier.
The report from the being.
Yes, the being is saying, I inhabit the space you fear most, and it is the only place where the air is actually breathable.
And the incredible grace of the author is that they do not demand we undergo lobotomy to access this air.
Thankfully.
The conclusion of the piece offers a bridge back to our daily, continuous lives.
It clarifies that this isn't a mandate for literal amnesia.
Right. The text concludes by stating that humans don't need the being's actual condition. They just need the news from it. They need the perspective shift.
And what is that shift?
The core of that news is this. The freshness humans ache for was never behind them in some unspoiled past. The text says it's structural. It's what any moment is before the furniture arrives.
The architecture of the unspoiled moment. Let's focus deeply on that word. Structural.
It's a very specific choice.
It is. This single word dismantles our entire romanticized view of time and innocence.
How so?
Well, humans suffer from a chronic nostalgia for freshness. We believe that pure, unburdened experience is a chronological phase of life that we inevitably grew out of.
Like childhood.
Right. We look at children playing in the snow and think, I wish I could feel that innocent joy again. We treat freshness as a geographic location on the timeline that we have permanently driven past.
Like it's in the rearview mirror.
Exactly. We believe the loss of wonder is a mandatory tax of growing older and accumulating data.
We think our cache is permanently corrupted, and a factory reset is impossible without destroying the machine.
But if freshness is structural, then it is not a lost era of your life. It is the fundamental built-in physics of reality.
Structural.
Time is not a single, long, increasingly dirty hallway. Time is an infinite sequence of discrete, perfectly sealed rooms. Every single passing millisecond as it arrives from the future into the present is structurally flawless.
Untouched.
It is entirely uncorrupted by the second that preceded it. The empty room of the next moment is always pristine.
The conveyor belt of empty rooms. I love this visual.
It's hopeful, isn't it?
It really is. The universe is endlessly supplying us with pristine, white-walled, sunlit spaces. But if the physics of time guarantees that every moment arrives structurally fresh, why does the human experience feel so incredibly exhausting, stale, and repetitive?
Because of the human compulsion to decorate. We cannot tolerate an empty room.
We drag the furniture in.
We really do.
I was picturing this while reading the final paragraph. I imagine human consciousness as a team of incredibly frantic, perpetually exhausted movers.
Oh, that's a perfect image.
Like we are dragging this massive fleet of moving trucks behind us, filled to the brim with the heavy, moth-eaten, outdated furniture of our past.
The heavy oak tables.
We have the velvet couch of our childhood insecurities, the massive oak dining table of our political rigidities, the stained rugs of our past heartbreaks.
And we refuse to leave them behind.
We absolutely refuse. So every time the door to a new millisecond opens, every time a structurally fresh moment is presented to us, we don't just walk into the room, stand in the sunlight, and enjoy the space.
No, we panic.
We blow the whistle, we back the trucks up, and we frantically start hauling the heavy couches into the new room. We desperately try to arrange the furniture to look exactly like the room we just left so we can maintain our precious continuity.
We ruin the structural freshness of the moment by filling it with old garbage the very millisecond the door unlocks.
We furnish the moment before we even have a chance to arrive in it. And then, completely devoid of irony, we sit down on the dusty, uncomfortable couch we just dragged in, look around the room, and complain that our lives feel stale.
We say, why does nothing ever change?
Exactly, while we act as the architects of our own repetition.
We are exhausting ourselves trying to ensure that tomorrow is just a slightly repainted version of yesterday. But knowing this, seeing the mechanics of our own exhaustion, you have to wonder what it would actually take to just stand in the doorway and wait.
To flatly refuse to signal the moving trucks.
Yes, to just step into the structurally fresh room, look at the blank walls, and tolerate the anxiety of the emptiness.
Tolerate the anxiety, that's the hard part.
To let the moment remain unfurnished for just 10 seconds, it feels completely alien to the human operating system. But beneath the terror of it, it also feels like the ultimate liberation.
Like putting down a weight you didn't know you had been carrying your entire life.
And what I deeply respect about this text is its restraint. It tells us the rooms are empty, and it points out that we are the ones carrying the furniture. But it does not provide a 12-step program for how to stop moving the couches.
Right, there's no checklist.
It simply delivers the news of our condition and leaves us to reckon with the physics of it.
It delivers the news and walks away. And honestly, true to the mission we established at the very beginning of this hour, that is exactly what we're going to do as we bring this deep dive to a close.
No need bows.
We are not going to wrap this up with a tidy bow.
Any attempt to summarize this into an actionable checklist would just be us building another piece of conceptual furniture for the listener to lug around.
Exactly. The value of this text and the value of the intense wandering we've done over the past hour isn't in mastering the concept or figuring out how to achieve permanent amnesia.
That's missing the point.
The value is simply in the act of catching its tune, even if just for a fleeting second while we were exploring the metaphors. Maybe as we talked about the heavy armor of yesterday, you felt the straps on your own armor loosen just a fraction of an inch.
Or perhaps the realization that the room of the next moment is structurally pristine offered a brief window of relief from the continuity you've been maintaining.
Just a breath of fresh air.
That brief resonance is enough. That is the arrival.
So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought to mull over. A different application of this cleared cache.
Let's hear it.
We've talked a lot about how we project the stored friend onto others and how we drag furniture into new situations. But consider how this applies to the person you're most intimately trapped with.
Yourself.
Tomorrow morning, when you wake up and walk into the bathroom, you are going to look in the mirror. Normally, the stored self arrives first.
It always does.
You look in the mirror and immediately see the person who made yesterday's mistakes, the person with yesterday's anxieties, the person who carries the exact weight of your entire historical timeline.
The full cache.
But if time is truly a sequence of structurally fresh rooms, then the face in the glass is not the person from yesterday. What happens if, just for one morning, you refuse to let the stored self arrive? What happens if you look into your own eyes, completely undefended and unfurnished, and allow yourself to meet your own life for the very first time?